Hey everybody, welcome back to Vedic Sage. I'm Dr. Dhaliwal, and today we're going to continue talking about chronic fatigue syndrome from an Ayurvedic perspective, focusing on Vata dosha imbalance being the root cause of this disorder. Now we know that Vata dosha is made up primarily of ether and air elements with qualities such as dry, light, cold, rough, mobile, and subtle. So we're going to take a look to see how we can manage this condition, chronic fatigue syndrome, from an Ayurvedic perspective, focusing on certain herbs specific to the disease, the doshic imbalance, the state of the Agni or the digestive fire, and taking into consideration which of the bodily tissues are affected. For example, we know that chronic fatigue syndrome is associated with decreased ojas, and we know that certain herbs such as bala, which gives strength and vitality to the body, would be beneficial for chronic fatigue syndrome. Likewise, if the fatigue is taking place because of an imbalance of Vata dosha, we can give an herb that's specific to the dosha, such as ashwagandha. Likewise, if there's any impairment to Agni, we can provide herbs to help kindle and increase the flame of this digestive fire. For example, we can give chitrak to help kindle the flame of this digestive fire. And finally, we want to take a look at which of the bodily tissues are affected. For example, if rasa dhatu, which is the plasma of blood, is affected by Vata, there's going to be signs and symptoms of increased temperature, especially in the evening. There may be some lymphatic congestion, cold and shivering associated with the fever, and therefore you may want to consider an herb such as tulsi, fresh ginger, or even consider sudarshan if there's a fever involved. Likewise, if Vata dosha gets imbalanced, for example, it's increased in the colon and spreads into the systemic circulation and enters into Rakta Dhatu, which is the hematocrit, and we'll just take a look at the red blood cell, for example. This can lead to anemia, and therefore you may want to consider an herb such as Loha Bamsa, which will help balance our Vata dosha that's manifesting in the hematocrit or Rakta Dhatu. If the qualities of Vata enter into the muscle tissue, and once again, we know that the qualities of Vata are dry, light, cold, rough, mobile, and subtle. So if the mobile quality enters into the muscle tissue, the mobile quality of Vata entering into the muscle tissue will create signs and symptoms of muscle tics and spasms, perhaps even tremors, and overall muscle fatigue. And therefore, you may want to consider an herb such as ashwagandha, which is very similar to ginseng. If the qualities of Vata enter into the fat tissue, known as Meda Dhatu in Ayurveda, then this can lead to a loss of adipose tissue, emaciation, and even very low levels of cholesterol. And therefore, you may want to consider herbs such as Yasti Madhu, which is licorice, and even Vidari to help stabilize the cholesterol levels. If the qualities of Vata enter into Ashti Dhatu, which is the bone tissue, this can lead to osteoporosis and osteoarthritis, and therefore you would want to consider an herb such as Kamaduda. And lastly, if the qualities of Vata dosha enter into the Majja Dhatu, which is the nerve tissue, this can manifest as tingling, numbness, loss of sensation, and neuralgia, and therefore you would want to consider herbs such as Jatamamsi, Brahmi, and even Shankapushpi. So this gives you an overall perspective of how Ayurveda manages chronic fatigue syndrome specific to a Vata dosha imbalance. So we took a look at herbs that are specific to the disease, the dosha, the type of Agni, as well as which of the bodily tissues are affected. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, you take care and be well.